Right now, India is in the middle of a massive economic experiment, a complete overhaul of its labor laws. So, what's actually changing? And why does it matter to, hundreds of millions of people? Well, in this explainer, we are going to break it all down.
All right, let's jump right in. To really get a handle on this, you've got to understand the sheer scale of what we're talking about here. The numbers behind India's workforce are, well, they're absolutely staggering. Just take a look at this number. Over 643 million people employed. And to put that into perspective, the country added a net 168 million jobs in just 6 years. That's not just growth, you guys. That's an absolute explosion of economic activity. So all that incredible growth, it brings up a really critical question, right? When your workforce is expanding at that kind of breakneck speed, was the old legal framework, a lot of it decades and decades old, really up to the task? Was it built for a modern economy? And before this big overhaul, the answer to that question was a resounding no. For both businesses and workers, the system wasn't really a framework. It was more like a giant, confusing maze. I mean, just try to imagine this for a second. You're trying to navigate 29 separate, often overlapping, and sometimes totally contradictory central labor laws. It was, to put it mildly, a compliance nightmare. So, yeah, the reason for a total reform was pretty darn clear. The old system was this tangled web of outdated laws, many of them from before independence, and it just created chaos for everyone. The Second National Commission on Labor basically said, we need to simplify this drastically, and they pushed for a single system for registration and licenses. And that recommendation is exactly what led to the government's big solution, a radical plan to consolidate everything and finally bring some clarity and efficiency to the whole shebang. And this really gets to the heart of it. The government took all those 29 messy laws, streamlined them, simplified everything, and boiled them down into just 4 unified codes. It's a journey from total complexity to, hopefully, a lot more clarity. Okay, so now let's dive in and take a closer look at each of these 4 new codes. What do they actually do?
First up is the Code on Wages. Pretty self-explanatory, right? This one is all about unifying the rules on how people get paid to make sure things are fair and consistent across the board.
Now this is a huge deal. Before, minimum wage laws only covered certain specific jobs, which was only about 30% of the workforce. But now, it's a legal right for every single employee in the country. It doesn't matter if you're in the organized sector or the unorganized sector. Everyone is covered. The code also does a few other really important things. It brings in a national floor wage. That's a baseline that no state can dip below. It flat out prohibits gender discrimination in pay and hiring. And it changes the role of inspectors to facilitators, which means their job is now more about helping businesses comply, not just catching them out. All right, next up, the Industrial Relations Code. This one tackles the relationship between employers and employees, everything from contracts to disputes, and tries to bring it into the 21st century. So a really key idea here is something called fixed-term employment. Basically, it lets companies hire people for specific projects on a contract basis. But, and this is the crucial part, those workers have to get the exact same wages, benefits, and Social Security as permanent employees. Plus, they can get a gratuity payment after just 1 year of service, which is a big change. This code also creates a reskilling fund to help workers who've been laid off learn new skills. It raises the size threshold for companies that need government approval for layoffs, which is meant to improve the ease of doing business. And, importantly, it requires a 14-day notice before any strikes or lockouts, really pushing for dialogue before things escalate. Okay, code number 3 is a really big one, Social Security. The goal here is huge. To create a universal safety net that covers pretty much every kind of worker you can imagine in today's economy. And this is a game changer for sure. In the past, Social Security was mostly for people in the formal organized sector. This new code blows that wide open. It extends coverage to unorganized workers and, for the very first time, it officially recognizes and includes gig workers and platform workers. We're talking about your ride-sharing drivers, your delivery partners. They're now part of the system. So how does it work? Well, it sets up a special fund just for these workers. It expands the National Health Insurance Program to cover the whole country. It even says that accidents on your commute to or from work are now covered. And the whole system is being built on digital platforms to keep things transparent. And that brings us to the 4th and final code.
the Occupational Safety, Health, and Working Conditions Code. As the name suggests, this is all about making sure every single worker has a safe and healthy place to work no matter what they do. And here again, you can really see that push for simplification. Before, a business might have needed up to 6 different registrations just for safety laws. Now, it's just one single electronic registration. That is a massive cut down on red tape. This code also brings in some other progressive changes. It expands protections for interstate migrant workers, which is so important. It allows women to work night shifts as long as they consent, and there are safety measures in place. It makes free annual health checkups mandatory for employees. And it combines 6 different advisory boards into just one to streamline how things are managed. So, okay, we've looked at all 4 codes. When you step back and put all these pieces together, what's the big picture here? What's the grand vision for India's gigantic labor market? And really, it all boils down to this. The whole point is to transform the system. It's a shift from something complex and outdated to something simple and modern. From a mess of multiple registrations to just a single one. From an enforcement style that was all about punishment to one that's about helping companies comply. And maybe most importantly, from a system with limited scope to one with universal wages and social security.
Look, there's no denying it. This is one of the most ambitious economic reforms India has seen in decades. It's trying to strike that tricky balance between protecting workers and making it easier for businesses to grow. The idea is to lay a whole new foundation for the future. But the real question, the big unknown, is how this massive overhaul will actually play out on the ground in the coming years. Will it truly reshape the future of work in India? Only time will tell.